This is the Becoming Muslim podcast at untoislam.com, the show that helps people convert to Islam with hosts from the US, UK, and Australia.
Well, I grew up in Houston in an area called Trinity Gardens. It was a very rough area. We were very poor, white family in the middle of a predominantly black and Hispanic area of Houston. We had a difficult time. A branch of the Pentecostal faith. That was my first introduction to religion. And from there, when I got in high school, that was the era where breakdancing and rap music started becoming very prominent and so forth. And I got involved with that and wound up signing a record deal with actually one of my coaches, believe it or not. He was my partner in the music business. That was where I was first introduced to Islam, where on a very, very minimal level, but there was one day going to the studio. Matter of fact, coming back into Houston, going to the studio in Houston, he had a Quran that was sitting on the armrest between us. So I picked it up and he said, brother, before you start reading it, read it from the standpoint that our Creator is speaking directly to you. And so I started reading. The Christians that were raising me for the most part, and then what I'm reading in the Quran and struggling with, okay, this Christian thing doesn't make sense to me. That Islam is, believing in one God, one Creator, associating no partners with Him, and so forth. That seemed to be more consistent with my natural inclinations. Call themselves Christians. These are the same people that you may see at the clubs that I was seeing at the clubs when I was performing, right? I mean, I was a Muslim at heart, but wasn't drinking at the club. I was there to perform. But the point being is that all this confusion that's centered around, I mean, no offense to any Christians that may hear this, but just the confusion in your mind about who's Jesus, how can a father be his own son, and how can there be two different gods? Wait a minute, are they not the same God? All the confusion that exists there was eliminated, completely and utterly eliminated with Islam. If you have limited time to do so, you shouldn't be passing judgment on something that you don't have any knowledge about if you don't have a legitimate knowledge of it. I'd encourage people to, before you pass your judgment, take time, slow down a minute, ask yourself, how did you come to believe what you believe? Put it on the scales and be sincere, be willing to say, maybe I don't like these Muslims because I've heard I shouldn't like them over and over and over again. That's typically what happens. Okay, the name of this poem is God, Allah, or Jehovah. It was written in 2011. I did not memorize it, so I'm just reading it. And it says, how narrow-minded can you be? Putting limits on our Creator as though you were He? What is it you believe? Was heaven created for just you? And those who believe in similar ways that you do? If that were true, our Creator wasted His time in creating so many races and faces in a diverse mankind. But man ignores the signs. How little we care. Constantly ignoring the truth leaves us lost and unaware. The prophets were all different, yet their messages were the same. Leading people to our Creator, He is one, they proclaimed. But let a common man explain and interpret the unseen, and we'll have numerous versions of the same common theme. Various visions and dreams, like rivers to the sea, each twisting and winding, defining where we'll be. Each and every one different, like the fingerprints of man. But it's man who limits our Creator, because man can't understand. From the west, you look east, and so it's hard to relate. Different customs have you bamboozled as you determine their fate. You hear all praises due to Allah and consider it odd, when in reality, in Arabic, Allah simply means the God. Language barriers causing chaos, comfort levels perplexed, passing judgment on your brother, throwing a noose around his neck. On Sunday morning in the pulpit, preachers are shaking their fists, wrapping God in cocoons marking off names from his list, sending Muhammad to hell like he's Lucifer's seed. You burn the Quran instead of taking time to read. What would Jesus tell you if you could hear him today about a prophet and a people who bow 5 times a day, bound by total submission as defined by Islam, giving praise to God, but yet you label us all? If one looks like bin Laden, does that mean he's the same? If one resembles Charles Manson, does that make him insane? The prophets all came to address their time, appointed by our Creator to guide the blind. So open your mind, unshackle their words. Don't pick and choose passages or pick and choose what you've heard. God the Father, the Creator of heaven and earth, he breathed life in the man, and the prophet Adam came first, with unlimited mercy, enough for us all, the Christian, Jew, the Muslim, whoever will call, and stand tall in faith as Abraham proclaimed. Before there was a Jesus and before Muhammad ever came, there was God, Allah, Jehovah, but what's in his name? For he's one and forever, and that's the truth I proclaim.
Welcome to the Becoming Muslim podcast at ontoislam.com. Today we have a special guest. It's Kenny Bomer. His name is Mujahid Islam. He converted to Islam in 1987. That was 34 years ago at the age of 17. He's now 49. He's from Houston, Texas, in the United States, and he is an inspector for the American Petroleum Institute. He's a former hip-hop artist. He signed 2 record deals, one in 1986 and another one in the year 2000. He's the author of the book, Consider Islam, Disproving the Patriots of Propaganda. And he's also working on 2 books at the moment. The first one, Everything is a Test, Truth is Made Clear from Falsehood. And the second one is, You Might Be an Islamophob If. He's the host of Kenny Bomer Live on Consider This TV, and his passions include calling people to Islam, writing, and debating. So welcome to the show, Kenny.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, peace be upon you too, Kenny. That's great. So I really enjoyed your introduction poem there. That was nice. I really enjoyed that. So can you tell us about your life as a young Kenny? What were you up to?
Well, I grew up in Houston in an area called Trinity Gardens. It was a very rough area. We were very poor, white family in the middle of a predominantly black and Hispanic area of Houston, very rough area of Houston. And we had a difficult time. And at the age of 11 or so, my parents, they actually split up. They wound up divorcing. And my brother and I left Houston, went to an area about an hour south of here, and called the Freeport Lake Jackson area, Missouri County. And we were eventually abandoned, to be quite honest. We were abandoned. We were pretty much on our own, and we were placed in what was called the Missouri County Youth Home. And up until that point, I really hadn't had any religious upbringing, but the people at the youth home were some very, very good Christian people. Matter of fact, I love these people to this day. But we were going to what's called Assemblies of God churches, which is a branch of the Pentecostal faith, and that was my first introduction to religion. And from there, when I got in high school, that was the era where breakdancing and rap music started becoming very prominent and so forth. And I got involved with that and wound up signing a record deal with actually one of my coaches, believe it or not. He was my partner in the music business. And he was in his early 30s, and he'd been DJing at parties and so forth. And we approached me and some other guys. We used to do a lot of battle rap and beatboxing and so forth in the hallways and the pep rallies and so forth. And so we approached him about DJing for us. And from there, make a long story short, we wound up, the coach and I, he became our partner in the music business. He was a Muslim, by the way. He was actually a member of the Nation of Islam, which is not really true Orthodox Islam, but that was my first introduction to Islam on any level. We started recording the first album, and between the first and the second album, he didn't accept, but he joined the Nation of Islam, and that was where I was first introduced to Islam, where on a very, very minimal level, but it was one day going to the studio, Matter of fact, coming back into Houston, going to the studio in Houston, he had a Quran that was sitting on the armrest between us, and so I picked it up, and he said, brother, before you start reading it, read it from the standpoint that our Creator is speaking directly to you. And so I started reading and read the first chapter of the Quran, got to the second chapter of the Quran, and it says, this is the book of which there is no doubt. And, from reading from there, and I was very intrigued by what it said, because what it was saying in that second chapter alone, the first chapter speaks for itself. The second chapter goes into more detail, of course, and what it was saying was confirming everything that I was feeling internally about, who God is, and, questioning the whole identity of Jesus, peace be upon him, and so forth. And so at the age of 17, like you had mentioned, I simply by reading the Quran and engaging in different conversations with my partner, who was a member, again, of the Nation of Islam, which is the Black Muslim organization that Malcolm X was a part of. But like Malcolm X, of course, the Nation of Islam is it's not true Islam. There's a lot of things that they do there that are inconsistent with true Islam. But I remember one question in particular that I asked him. I wanted to go to what they call the temple. I was just, wanted to go check it out. And he said that I couldn't go there because I wasn't black. And although members of what's called the Fruit of Islam, the security detail for the Nation of Islam, when we performed primarily during our second album, our second album was very political, very social. And so the Fruit of Islam would come, and it was kind of like our security team when we performed live or whenever we were out doing interviews and so forth. And but when he told me that I couldn't go to the temple, I was a little bit bewildered, because what I was reading in the Quran was inconsistent with what he was saying. Of course, that was my partner once again, and we started debating back and forth about different things from the Quran and how the Nation of Islam approaches it versus what I was reading in the Quran. And even at that time, I didn't know about the Hadith and so forth, which is the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad and his actions and so forth. For people who don't know, but from there, I just simply on my own, I knew that Islam was the answer for my questions. It seemed very natural, and so despite the Christian upbringing in the youth home that I lived in, once again I was put there not because of anything that I did wrong, but my brother and I were abandoned, so it was a place for abandoned and abused children and so forth, and I lived there to the age of 18, and so. In between time, so I was struggling with the going to church every Sunday and Sunday morning, Sunday night, every Wednesday, and so forth, and being influenced by the Christians that were raising me for the most part, and then what I'm reading in the Quran and struggling with, okay, this Christian thing doesn't make sense to me. That Islam is, believing in one God, one Creator, associating no partners with him and so forth, that seemed to be more consistent with my natural inclinations. And so I wound up accepting Islam at the age of 17.
Okay, great. Kenny, so can we go back to that moment? You mentioned that you were sitting next to your rap partner and you picked up the Quran. So why did you actually do that?
Just out of curiosity, one thing I was intrigued by is the fact that it was the Yusuf Ali translation of the Quran, and it opened opposite from an English book, mainly because we know at this point that Islam reads from the left to the right instead of right to the left, or vice versa. I just said that backwards. Islam reads from the right to the left versus us reading in English from left to the right. So I was initially intrigued by that. I just picked it up because I liked the way it looked and open. I knew what it was. I mean, it was the first time that I actually seen it. He kept telling me about it, but that was the first time that I actually seen it. And so I picked it up and I was like, what's going on here? Why is it opening like this? I had no clue, had very limited knowledge about it, to be honest, at that point. So I didn't know that the Arabic language was read in an opposite direction and so forth. And, but it had the English translation there. And, I read the opening verse of the chapter of the Quran, Fatiha, and which is literally called the opening in English. And I was intrigued by it alone because it seemed so similar to the Lord's Prayer in Christianity, very, very similar. And then when I get to chapter 2 of the Quran, I was very, very intrigued by the fact that it made such a strong and prominent statement in saying, this is the book of which there is no doubt. There's no doubt in it for those who fear their Lord, who stay steadfast in prayer, and who give in charity, and so forth. And I was like, well, this is beautiful. This is what a strong, powerful statement. And I was basing that and juggling that with the messages that I was getting in the church, and the conflicting ideas. And sometimes we were praying to God, and then sometimes we're praying to Jesus. Sometimes we're praying to both of them in the same prayer. We're never praying to the Holy Spirit. And so I'm like, this, I was juggling that. But reading the Quran, as I kept reading, I was so intrigued by it. I kept reading the whole trip there, coming to the studio. And then after that, he actually wound up giving me that very Quran. And after he passed away in 2011, as a matter of fact. And I wound up giving that Quran back to his oldest son, because his oldest son wasn't a Muslim at that point. And I was, trying to, I wanted to give him something that meant something very special to me. It was a gift to me. To me, I approach Islam as though it is a gift that was given to mankind from our Creator. And Islam, by definition, means submission to the will of God, our Creator. It's a gift for us to have a true understanding of what that actually entails and what that means. And that's why I do what I do in trying to convey and talk to people about Islam and write about Islam and so forth, defend Islam against the propaganda used against it, because I feel like it's a gift. I cannot make it. If it wasn't for Islam, I would most likely be an atheist, to be honest, because at this point I've studied the Bible in depth, and I debate topics and so forth. And so if that's the only route that I had to go, I would probably I would be an atheist. But I feel like I've been given a gift, and therefore I think it's appropriate for us. Matter of fact, it's part of our obligation as Muslims to actually share that gift with other people in a variety of different ways. And that's what I try to live my life doing.
Okay, great. So that time when you picked up the Quran and started reading it, that must have been a really major turning point for you. But can you think before that, were there any other interactions with Islam that you can remember?
No, there wasn't. Other than, my partner telling me, the content of the music went from just kind of in the first album, just more fun type music, to in the second album, it got much more serious. I was getting older. His transition from joining the Nation of Islam and being a little more political and social. Naturally, I was a person who, because I grew up around drug activity and stuff like that when I was a child, it's something that I never wanted to be part of. And so the social messages and the political messages and so forth, the religious messages that we were writing about in the second album, it just kind of all came together. And Islam, I didn't even realize it at the time, but Islam was the foundation of that, because it was, even though he wasn't practicing Orthodox and true Islam, the fundamentals were still there, as far as your character and how you carry yourself, things you avoid, things you don't talk about, and as far as engaging in unnecessary conversations about just things that don't benefit the individual or society as a whole. Those kind of qualities were there in my partner, and the members of the Nation of Islam that stood as our security team. Even though I'm Caucasian, obviously, they treated me like I was one of their brothers, despite that. And so that whole idea of Islam being a religion that it's for all people, and it was primarily me reading the Quran, but there was some interactions there in the discussions that we had, and just the influences and the but my partner in the music business, his name was Norris Burst, by the way, Norris Muhammad eventually, but he he was my partner. He was my friend. He was my brother. He was like a father figure to me. He was one of my coaches. You know, I played football in high school, and so he was a very big figure in my life as far as that period of my life. But it wasn't him that influenced me. Not directly. I guess it was indirect, but it was mainly the content that I was reading in the Quran, coupled with uh, uh, you know the things that we were talking about and things that we were engaging in, the conversations we had, and so forth. But yeah, so it just kind of all went hand in hand, and yeah, it was a great blessing to me.
Okay,
Great
great.
blessing.
So what happened next? So after you started reading the Quran, then you're sort of finding out more about Islam. What was the next turning point?
Well, so I accepted Islam. Let's put it like this: I accepted Islam internally in my heart at the age of 17. I actually didn't do the Shahada, make the testimony of faith, until I was probably 19, maybe 20 years old. And I did it, matter of fact, at the East Side Mosque, or Masjid rather, here in Houston. And matter of fact, my partner, we went there specifically for me to go and do the Shahada. And the Nation of Islam doesn't actually do the Shahada, but to answer your question, so uh, I went from that to other than my partner in the music business, I didn't know any other Muslims, and so I didn't have uh, a a Muslim community around me to guide me and to answer questions for me. So primarily, everything that I learned, I did it myself. And when I went to the masjid and did the testimony of faith, the shahada, I also got a little prayer book and telling you how to pray and so forth. And so I went through the process on my own of literally standing and looking at this book. And sometimes I would write the prayers on a piece of paper so I could try to learn what I'm reciting and so forth. And I was primarily just reciting in English at that point, just trying to, take one step at a time. And, obviously I'm not an Arabic speaker. Matter of fact, most people in the world are not Arabic speakers. Um, but it's important that we recite the prayers in Arabic. But that, for a long period, I didn't do that because I had no one to teach me how to recite it in Arabic, and it was long before we had apps and Quran apps and so forth on people's phones where you can listen to recitations and so forth. I literally had never heard it. I never even heard the Adhan at that point, and so everything that I was learning, it was primarily me doing what our Creator tells us to do in the Quran, saying to read, recite, proclaim. And that that uh, that man, that our Creator has taught man what they did not know, and He taught them by the pen that which they did not know. And it's our obligation as human beings to seek knowledge and so forth. And that's basically what I was doing. I was so intrigued by what I was reading and this natural God-given instinct that we know that a Creator exists, and the things that we go through in our lives, the things that we commit sins, and we have fears, and we go through different tests and trials and so forth. And so you need feel that inclination to cry out to someone and something. Who better to cry out than the one that created us? And so basically I just started learning on my own. I started reading different books, and it was a process. I spent a lot of time because of the music business. I was, even though I didn't drink and do drugs and so forth. I simply didn't have, for a long period of time, I didn't have a foundation of a Muslim community or people around me that could guide me. And once again, my partner was a member of the Nation of Islam, so it's different. That's not true Islam. So I was kind of on a journey on my own for most of my life, to be quite honest, most of my life. And but in my heart, Islam was always there. I always believed in the oneness of our Creator. Didn't pray to Jesus, and I just kept throughout the course of my life, reading and seeking knowledge here and there. And I wish I'd have spent more time in being more consistent. At 49 years old, I realized how much time that I wasted. And I think that's part of the reason why I do what I do now, is because in 2014, I went through a very tragic life event. Probably the most, for sure, it was the greatest test of my life, but it was also my greatest blessing in disguise. And during that period of my life in 2014, I realized that, you know what, when it boils down to it, the only one that I can truly, any human being for that matter, that we can truly at all times trust and believe in and rely upon is our Creator. Because, close friends and family fail you. People die, they pass away. Sometimes they don't, money can't do it. And so people start chasing drugs and alcohol. That doesn't satisfy you. You start chasing sex and so forth. That doesn't satisfy you. It's just all momentary, just fleeting moments. And then after it's over with, or sometimes in the middle of the whatever you're doing, you're feeling a discomfort within yourself. And so in 2014, I literally lost everything. I lost my family. I lost everything. It's a lot to go into, but at that point, my outlook about life, it completely changed. I went through the greatest test of my life, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it was my greatest gift, other than initially accepting Islam, obviously. But what it did is recondition me and say, you know what? If I only have my Creator, when it boils down to it, I only have my Creator that I can truly depend upon, then I should be telling other people that are struggling with different tests and trials the same thing. Listen, don't get caught up in chasing things of the world, things of creation. Chase the Creator and, do things that would be pleasing to the Creator. And so therefore, that's when I started, planning to write the book. And I began doing a lot of what's called dawah, talking to people about Islam. Seeking knowledge, listening to debates, listening to the lectures, and so forth. Wound up becoming the imam for the area back in that same area that I mentioned, just outside of Houston, about an hour away in the Brazosport area. I was the imam there for about a year and a half, and before I moved back to Houston. And so that's what I did. I just that's where my passion is, and I just feel like. Maybe because of all the time that I wasted, even though I was a Muslim at heart, but I was seeking knowledge here and there, but not as consistently as when I look back and think, there's so much more I could have been doing if I'd have had the proper, our Creator guides us in the direction that's best for us in life. But, I look back and I consider the time that I wasted, and it reminds me of a chapter of the Quran called Asr. And it says, in English, it says, by the gift of time, surely mankind is in loss, except for those who do good righteous deeds and who guide one another to truth, patience, and constancy, being patient in the midst of your trials. And so if you notice what it says by the gift of time, by the token of time itself. Our Creator doesn't need time. He created time for us. And by this gift that he's given us in this time, it says mankind is in loss, but there's a group among them. It says, except those people who do good righteous deeds and who guide one another to truth and being patient and so forth. And another verse of the Quran where it says, our Creator tells us that it's he who created us in a state of weakness, and then afterwards gave us strength, and then after that turned us to weakness and gray hair. And this is another example of time, in that calling our attention to time, in that when our Creator first created us, we had everything that we needed, being that from the very moment of our conception, our Creator has given us everything that we needed in the wombs of our mothers, right? And then we're raised by our parents for a period of time. Sometimes parents make mistakes and so forth, but we have communities and we have, we have an upbringing. So God's providing for us, no matter what our status is, no matter what we're doing in this world, he's always providing for us. And then he gives us strength where we have the capacity. We start growing in our minds and our bodies, and we can do things. We're active and so forth. And then there's a period where we begin to decline. And at 49 years old, I see the difference in my body in regards to being 49 and 19 and 29 and 39. And, so it's a reminder as I see more gray hair coming in and so forth, that my time is limited in this earth. And I can feel the weakness in my body, and I still have the capacity of my mind and so forth. But it's indicative of us, the whole element of time, that we should be considering the time that we have. And so when I look back over the course of my life, I think, man, if I'd have known what I know now, if I'd have done the research that I did, that I've done since 2014 and so forth. I mean, in depth, every single day, talking to people about Islam, reading, listening to lectures, listening to debates, writing books and so forth. I mean, deeply engulfed and involved in this. If I wish that I'd have been doing that and set the music aside back then, the music that really doesn't mean anything in the big picture of life, but telling people about our Creator and guiding people to truth and telling people about being patient in the midst of their adversities and so forth, and and speaking about the oneness of our Creator versus this confusion and all this that actually turns a lot of people, that are call themselves Christians. These are the same people that you may see at the clubs that I was seeing at the clubs when I was performing, right? I mean, I was a Muslim at heart, but wasn't drinking at the club. I was there to perform. But the point being is that all this confusion that's centered around, I mean, no offense to any Christians that may hear this, but just the confusion in your mind about who's Jesus, how can a father be his own son, and how can there be two different gods? Wait a minute, are they not the same God? All the confusion that exists there was eliminated, completely and utterly eliminated with Islam, in that we have one Creator and we rely upon Him and Him alone. And so I try to use my time as I reflect on my life, and use my time to do all that I can to tell people about this beautiful gift that I've been given called Islam. And that's what I intend to do till the day I die. So
Yeah.
I'm going to talk too much sometimes.
Thanks for sharing that, Kenny. So is there anything else about your convert story that you can share with us? Something that came to my mind was, the moment that you converted. So you said that the belief in Islam came into your heart at the age of 17, but you didn't actually properly convert until 19. So why did that take so long?
Well, I think just because the way my life was, having no Muslims around me, I didn't even know what the Shahada was, to be honest. I just knew in my heart, and I believe that our Creator knows our hearts and our intention, even though I didn't make the proclamation of faith, the testimony of faith, the Shahada, which for people who are listening means saying that I bear witness there's no God other than Allah, our Creator. The name Allah in the Arabic language simply means the God, meaning our Creator. So I bear witness there's no God other than our Creator, and I bear witness that Muhammad is His final messenger. And by saying that last statement is like also agreeing that you believe in all the previous prophets and messengers that have been sent to mankind. But I didn't know what that was at that point. But in my heart, I knew that Islam was the answer, and it's just the people that I was living around in my life, and just the way my life went. I didn't have any guidance, but internally I knew that Islam was the answer. And so by the age of 19, 20 or so, I was like, let me start looking at, I want to go to where the Muslims are. I just had an inclination. I want to go and talk to them. I want to see what they have to say. I want to watch them. I want to try to absorb all of this. And I remember when I went to do that, the brother's name was brother Buzdar, and he was from Egypt. And I came in and I told him that I just plain told him I want to accept Islam. I had no clue what to do. I went to take a shower. We do what's wudu, and you want to make sure you're clean and so forth. I went and took a shower, and went through this process, and he told me what to say while I was taking the shower. But when I came back and I began to recite the Shahada, the brother just started crying, and it was a beautiful moment. My partner was there as well, and it was just just a beautiful moment. I never forget this brother's name from Egypt, Brother Buzdar. And then it wound up that masjid there here in Houston is actually the main masjid for the Islamic Society of Greater Houston. And a couple of years ago, like I mentioned, when I was imam for the Brazosport Islamic Society, I actually wound up leading the prayer in that very masjid that I accepted Islam in at the age of 19 or 20, somewhere in there. I think I was still 19, but I wound up leading the prayer there, and I was just very emotional moment with that, because I would have never imagined that it's when I was 19 or 20 years old reciting the Shahada for the first time, that I would ever be leading the prayer there. Yeah, and it was a big moment for me.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you mentioned that when you accepted Islam in that mosque, and you described it as beautiful. So tell me more about how you were feeling at the time.
Well, I was intrigued, by the fact that I didn't know about the wudu. The members of the Nation of Islam, they don't really follow a lot of the things that are required. So my partner in the music business, he didn't know himself about these things. And so, going and doing the ablution, cleaning yourself and refreshing yourself and so forth, there was a lot of details that I didn't know about, he didn't know about. So he couldn't convey them to me. And I didn't know any other Muslims personally. And so I just, the whole experience of seeing these people of different races and places, people of different faces, all lining up side by side with one another in the most humblest of fashions, and people of all nations and colors and so forth, bowing their head before their Creator in what's really complete and total submission. I mean, that's how more submissive can you be than to bow your head before the one who created you? Your mind is in the prayer when it's happening. Emotionally, spiritually, you're involved in the prayer. Physically, you've humbled yourself, and it doesn't matter what your title, what your rank in life is, what you've achieved, how much money you have. It doesn't matter. So all those things came into play, and I was just like, wow, look at all these different people from all these different places, and I still feel that when I go to masjids now, that you walk in and you see people, white Muslims and Korean Muslims and Black Muslims and people from Egypt and Syria and Iraq and Iran and all these different places. It's just beautiful to me. I feel that same sensation every time that I'm in the masjid, because it really means something to me. It's other Muslims, I think maybe Muslims who are born into Islam through birth, traditionally, I'm not sure if they can relate to what I'm saying, but as a revert to Islam, I think it's for a long period of my life. Let me just say this, because I was the only Muslim that I knew other than my partner. I felt that Islam was mine. If that makes, I know that sounds crazy, but to me, it was my identity. It was like, even then I let people know that I'm a Muslim, and I would tell them on a very limited level what Islam was about and so forth, and we just left it at that. But Islam back then wasn't as not in my life. It wasn't as prominent. It was long before 9/11. And, after 9/11, of course, all the interest about Islam on various levels became very prominent. And at that point, I was already a Muslim, and it's like, I know this sounds crazy, but I felt it means so much to me that at that stage of my life, I was like, I felt like it was just mine. because and I was telling people about it, but if you understand what I mean by that, is because the way my life was, I didn't know any other Muslims. So everyone that I knew, I was the only Muslim other than my partner in the music business. But, he had already moved away at that point. And so there was a period where I was the only Muslim that I knew. I was the only Muslim. And so it was something that I just truly cherished. And it's been the greatest gift of obviously the greatest gift that anyone could ever receive is is true guidance and guidance towards worshiping our one Creator, which is our part of our very makeup. It's part of our very design. We're not designed to believe that a human being can be God or a God or any form of a God. We're just not designed as human beings to believe that. That's something that's passed down by tradition, and so I just Islam to me is a great gift.
Yeah, that's great. And can you remember the first times you performed the Islamic prayer? Can you remember how you were feeling?
I felt, praying, even when I was praying in English, naturally, the prayer itself, you feel good. Matter of fact, the Adhan, what does the Adhan say? It says, "Come to prayer, come to prayer, come to success." Come to success, telling people to come and do it. This is where you're gonna, you seek refuge in your Creator from all the things that you're facing in life, right? You're able to seek forgiveness for the wrongs that you've done, the sins you've committed, and be thankful for the blessings that you have. And so, even from the very beginning, when I was reciting it in English, I just felt so comforted by, going clean myself up. Even holding the piece of paper, trying to read the prayers, even in English at that point before memorizing English. And it was a process of learning it in Arabic and having to do the same thing. But just being humbled and realizing, your own vulnerabilities, your own weaknesses, your own, troubles and so forth. But we have a Creator that we can turn to, and going to the prayer, and when you get up from the prayer, you feel like you've accomplished something. And eventually, once you begin to establish the prayer, 5 times each day, day in, day out, you get to a point where if you are delayed in the prayer, or if you've somehow missed the prayer, you feel uncomfortable within yourself because you need to go back and make this connection with our Creator. And so that's where the peace comes from, that you feel like, just as the Adhan, the call to prayer says, come to prayer, come to success. And when you get up from the prayer, you feel successful. And I've always felt that way. Felt just refreshed every single time.
That's great. That's so true. So tell me, what's the most important thing about being a Muslim that you know now that you wish you knew at the start?
Well, obviously, being a Muslim, it requires, spending time and making effort. And the very first commandment that our Creator gives us in the Quran is the word Iqra. And this means to read, recite, proclaim, and to seek knowledge, to seek knowledge. And so, the most important thing in my mind is that it's part of our obligation. We wouldn't know about Islam if we didn't have the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who endured far more difficult things than we'll ever experience. Matter of fact, all the prophets, peace be upon them all, they experienced rejection. They've experienced ridicule, and some were killed, some were injured, some were slandered, and so forth. But we wouldn't know about true guidance unless there were people who were sacrificing their time and their efforts and spending and devoting their time to telling people these things. And so, to me, the most important thing is to seek knowledge. And once you begin to seek knowledge, for one, it's a form of worship, and then conveying that knowledge. So doing what's called dawah, which is similar for Christians, being a missionary. You're telling people, trying to evangelize and tell people about your religion and so forth. Well, that's something that's an obligation, and I always say, tell Muslims and non-Muslims alike, it's not only an obligation, it's our great opportunity. It's you receive blessings by doing so. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said to convey from me, even if it's just one verse. So even on any minimal level, when you begin to tell people about Islam and saying, in Islam we believe in the worship of only one God, who is our Creator, and so forth. Even on the most basic of levels, and being kind to people, giving to charity and so forth. This is all indication that someone has accepted the truth and then is trying to convey the truth through their words, their actions, their deeds, and so forth. And so that's important that we encourage one another. And I wouldn't be a Muslim today if my partner in the music business did not first start telling me about Islam. Of course, the Quran says that our Creator guides to those who He chooses. Some people are going to reject no matter what. They're just never going to accept it. There's a lot of atheists in the world. They don't even believe in a Creator, so they're not going to accept the truth. But for those who have a natural, and set aside their own personal desires and their own sense of being self-sufficient, even though good and well you're vulnerable. But the people who are willing to set that aside and say, you know what, I am weak. I make mistakes. I have fears. I have things that I'm dealing with in my life. And I need help. And turning to my Creator is the best route to go. And of course, He makes way. Provides. Puts things in our pathway to help us, but it's all blessings from our Creator. So again, the primary thing I think is the most important thing that I will convey is that the importance of seeking knowledge and sharing that knowledge with other people, and being open and freeing yourself of the social constructs of the world in which we live that have tried to create a God-man that's existed in pagan history long before Jesus, peace be upon him, and so forth, and setting aside things of the creation itself, where we make these things and deify these things in our lives, make gods out of money and members of the opposite sex and material items and titles and all those things. Set all that aside, because all that stuff's going to pass away. Every human being is going to pass away. Michael Jackson passed away. Elvis Presley passed away. All the fame, all the fortune, all the money, it means nothing in the big picture. So what is important? Being a good, decent individual, recognizing our Creator, seeking knowledge and sharing that knowledge. And that's how I try to live my life.
Yeah, thanks, Kenny. So I want to draw from your experience now. So when you accepted Islam, the world was really different, 34 years ago or whatever it was. So now people are coming into Islam. Many people are coming to Islam now. So what is the hardest thing for new Muslims in the current day?
This is part of the reason why I wrote the book, Consider Islam Disproving the Patriots of Propaganda. So what we're facing in current times, especially since 9/11, it was all actually happening before that on a lesser scale. But so the propaganda that's used to attack Islam is so prominent that even Muslims who were born into Islam traditionally, because of the pressures of the world in which we live and the Islamophobia in the world, they sometimes want to step into the shadows and become passive in a sense and try to hide their Muslim identity. And then on the flip side, on the flip side of that, the curiosity about Islam and what is this religion all about? We're seeing in the news and all these movies and on social media and so forth, that Islam is this and this. It's full of terrorism and all these things, and so people begin to look into it, either to attack it or just simply out of just curiosity, or maybe it's Muslims who want to feel like they need to try to defend it as well. It's opened up a door for people to gain knowledge about Islam. The Quran says, our Creator says in the Quran, man plans and God plans, and God is the best of planners, right? So in the midst of all this, what's happened is even despite the propaganda that's used to attack Islam, Islam is the fastest growing religion in literally every country in the world, with most reverts. That's another topic, but most people who are accepting Islam are women. But yet we see in the media and so forth that the Muslim women are supposed to be so heavily oppressed. And I'm not saying that there's not some of that happening in the world. There's some of that happening in every religion in the world, in all countries. So it's just human nature that sometimes people oppress other people, but it has nothing to do with true Islam. And so in the course of all of it, what's happened is that, sometimes the Muslims themselves they feel the pressure of the Islamophobia, and some have been literally attacked and so forth. Some get angry and they go on the attack, and sometimes, I mean, that happens, but it's not Islam that's telling them to do that. It's just simply not. But this false idea that it's Islam that's training people to become Johnny Jihad. I've had people think that I'm crazy just simply because I'm a Muslim. Matter of fact, not long ago, I had a cousin that I haven't heard from for a few years contacted me out of the blue and says, simply sent me a message saying, our whole family is disgusted with you. Just out of the blue. And I said, why is that? Because you're a Muslim. It's like, oh, okay. Well, I wouldn't change being a Muslim for any family members that think that. I mean, to be honest. But why do you think that? I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not, just simply because I believe something different than you do. That's fine. You go believe what you want to believe. I'll believe what I want to believe, and that's fine. I don't think you're disgusting because you believe something different. But because of the world we live in, my cousin, once again, who I've helped many, many times in many different ways, just contacted me out of the blue to tell me how much the whole family is disgusted with me. Well, guess what? I didn't grow up around them anyways because I lived at the youth home. So it's like, who did I have in the midst of my life? Did I have my family or did I have my Creator? Sometimes people do have their family and they have their Creator. Our Creator says in the Quran that your wives and your children, your family are a trial for you, but and to fear your Lord. So when it's all said and done, this whole 9/11 thing, it's done nothing. All the propaganda and so forth. It's actually they're doing counter what they're actually trying to achieve. And this is why, once again, our Creator says in the Quran that man plans and our Creator plans, and our Creator is the best of planners, right? Because despite all the attacks against the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and all the previous prophets for that matter, primarily the Prophet Muhammad, despite all of that, and despite the attacks against Islam is still growing. It's still, it's becoming more and more, more and more people are reverting to it. Matter of fact, by the year 2070, Islam will have surpassed Christianity in the number of followers. Even to this day, as we speak, Islam has the greatest number of practicing followers. I mentioned this in the book, Consider Islam, in a chapter titled, I can't remember the name of that chapter right now, but I'm addressing Christianity in that chapter. And so I mentioned that in the book, that if you walk into any nightclub or bar in America on Friday and Saturday night, and you just walk up and ask someone randomly what their religion is, they're going to say, just because of the demographics in the area in which we live, they're going to say, "Oh, I'm Christian." But and I'm not saying that Muslims don't do these things as well. But my point being is that even to this day, Muslims are have the largest number of actually practicing followers. By the year 2070, Islam will surpass Christianity in the overall numbers of followers as if these trends continue, which all the evidence shows that they will. The name of that chapter that I was talking about is titled "Christian Condemnation Continues," and I'm addressing, once again, in this book, I'm actually defending Islam against all the lies and the propaganda that have been used time and time again to attack Islam. And so
that's great. Yeah, so if anyone's interested in reading that book, you can check the links down in the show notes. And there's also another book which Kenny is working on. It's called "You Might Be an Islamophobe If." So how is this book different to Considering Islam?
So this book is, once again, the first book, Consider Islam, Disproving the Patriots of Propaganda, is a book of defense. It's a book defending Islam against the propaganda. And in a sense, the book, You Might Be an Islamophobe If, is also a book in defending Islam. But it's doing it on a different approach. And I got this idea. There's a I'm not sure if you know who Jeff Foxworthy is, but he has a book titled "You Might Be a Redneck If," and so he's a comedian, and what he does is list these funny scenarios where if such and such happens in your life, or you do this particular thing, or you say this particular thing, you very well might be a redneck. Okay, doesn't mean that you are, but you might be. Of course, it's a comedy book. Now, my book is not comedy at all. What I'm doing in that book is I'm taking examples of direct assaults against Islam on different levels, from people that are well known, people that are less well known, things that happen in social media and so forth, and demonstrating that if you have this quality, if you're doing this thing, then you might be one of these people that is an Islamophobe. Now, people think that this is a new term that was invented, and it's actually not. This word Islamophobia has existed since 1917, to be quite honest, when it was first coined. But so what I'm doing in that book is just pointing out to people that look, if you're saying these particular things, you're probably one who has a hatred for Islam. And then I asked the question, but have any Muslims ever approached you and harassed you in any way, or have any Muslims threatened you in any way? And I'm not saying that people don't threaten people, but I'm saying in regards to the religion itself, have any Muslims approached you and tried to force you to accept Islam? Well, there's people out there that literally think that happens, that Islam is forcing people to accept Islam, or you're going to be, dealt with. But that's not the case. It's not the case on any level, as a matter of fact. And so I'm saying, have any Muslims ever done this to you? Have any one Muslim ever come to you and tried to make you accept Islam? And how could they accomplish such a task? They can't. You can't make someone accept something. You can't make someone love you. You can't make someone be kind to you when it boils down to it. So how can you make someone accept your religion? And what good would it do for you if they did, when you forced them to do so? It's like trying to force someone to love you. Sure, they may say it on the surface, but internally they don't mean it. So it's going to undermine the very idea that someone would try to achieve that is absurd. It's like trying to get someone to play on your sports team that doesn't even want to play the game. What good is it going to do your team if this person doesn't even want to play the game, period? How can you, what good is forcing them to play going to do for you or your team or your community and so forth? It doesn't make any sense. So basically in that book, I'm addressing these characteristics of people who might be an Islamophobe if they display this type of character, or if they've done this particular deed, or they made this type of a comment, and just trying to use that as an example to try to dissuade people from engaging in those types of things, and just trying to use it as a platform to bring more awareness to the attacks against Islam. And in the process, what I also do is I counter it. So if you think Islam promotes terrorism, I'll mention things from the Quran and so forth, and from the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad that disprove this very idea that they've been taught to believe based on the media and so forth, things they see in social media or whatever.
Yeah, I like the idea of the way the book is structured, and it gives me an idea. Maybe I can rip off your idea and create a book titled "You might be thinking about converting to Islam if," or "You might be a potential Muslim if."
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
that's a great idea. Yeah, because the thing is that you'll find that, matter of fact, I have a segment on my show, Kenny Bomer Live, on Consider This TV. Let me just mention real quick, the platform Consider This TV now has 3 shows on it, and this is so the main show, the first show rather, was Kenny Bomer Live, Consider This TV, and now we have the another show on Consider This TV. I'm not the host of the show; I just produce it. On my show, Kenny Bomer Live, I'm obviously the host, but on the other 2 shows, we have one called Dealing in Dawah, and then one called Hawk Hunters, which Hawk Hunters is the newest one. And so there's 3 different shows on the same platform. But on my show, Kenny Bomer Live, I have a segment titled Reasons to Revert. And, I do the same thing. I interview reverts and want to hear their stories. And what you find is that a lot of the people who revert to Islam, they do so because they had the same questions in their mind that other people have had. How can a man be God? How can Jesus be the Son of God? How can a father be the son of himself? And This just doesn't make sense to me. All the questions that they have in their mind, they're very, very similar to, you hear very similar stories across the board with these reverts. So that's a great idea to make a book like that, because these patterns are very, very similar.
Yeah.
People have the same doubts and so forth.
Yep. Yeah. So if anyone's interested in checking out that platform, I believe it's on YouTube, the Consider This TV, then check the show notes. There'll be a link there.
Yes.
And also tell us about the third book that you mentioned. It's called Everything is a Test. Truth is Made Clear from Falsehood.
Yes. So this book is a very it's somewhat of a difficult book to write, and the reason I say that is because in the first two books, I'm strictly dealing with issues, but this book, it's based on a few verses of the Quran. One that I'll mention just briefly, where our Creator says, "Be sure we'll test you with fear and hunger and the loss of lives and property and the fruits of your labor, but we give glad tidings and hope to people who say when affected with these hardships, from our Creator we come, and to our Creator we're going to return." Meaning that no matter what we're facing in this life, in the big picture, if we stay patient and we endure patiently, and the Quran says to seek help through patience and prayer, and if we follow these guidelines, then no matter what happens, we have a reason to say, praise be to God, because He's gotten me through so many different tests and trials in my life, and I'm sure He's going to get me through whatever test and trial that I'm going through now. And as I say this, literally, the night before last, my ex-wife and my youngest son, their house burned down. And this is in 2019. My oldest son passed away after a tragic accident. He passed away, and I miss him dearly. But this whole idea, from God we come and to God we return, is something that I repeat numerous times throughout the course of my day. And it's a reminder to me when I miss my son, and when I see, going through these tests and trials, that no matter what happens, that our Creator has a plan. And if we just simply rely on Him and trust His wisdom, His faith, and be patient and so forth, we can make it. And so the book, Everything is a Test, Truth is Made Clear from Falsehood, is a book that's addressing the difficulties that we all face in this life on different levels: depression, loss of property, dealing with the pandemic, dealing with the effects of president like Donald Trump and so forth, and all the things going on in society, and this group against that group, and just all these various things that we deal with, and trying to convey to people, hey, look, there's a way out. There's hope. Don't just get lost in depression and get lost in things of the world and trying to cope with these issues. Truth is made clear from falsehood, and if you rely upon that truth that's been given, then there's no reason to fear. And if you're trying to chase things of the world in order to cope, sometimes you're just chasing absolute falsehood. You're chasing things that are never going to really satisfy you, but you're still chasing those things. And so that book is written on a more personal level. I talk about some very personal things, which makes it hard. I mentioned the death of my son in 2019, and of course, I'm still writing the book, so I'm sure I'm going to mention the fire that just transpired, where my ex-wife and my youngest son literally lost everything, and so trying to find ways to deal with that and so forth. And so we're all going through different things. People are affected by the COVID-19, something that we would have never imagined that would happen. But in the midst of all of it, if we rely upon our Creator and turn to Him and stay patient through all of it, and keep praying. It doesn't matter if you have to say the same prayer 1,000 times in a day. Hey, look, say it 1,000 times. Eventually, you're going to be reconditioned and realize that, what, I am going to make it. I'm going to push through this. And so that's what I'm trying to encourage people to do with that book.
Okay, Kenny, thanks for that. Thanks so much.
Sure.
So we're coming now towards the end of the episode, and I know you've probably got a lot more to say. I know you have got a lot more to say about this topic. So hopefully we can get you onto the show for another episode.
Sure. God willing.
So as a conclusion, can you give a summary to our listeners out there? your advice about what they should do and some action points that they should take. So they're thinking about becoming Muslim and they have a belief in God. What should they do now? What's your advice?
Well, I would say talk to the Muslims and be conscious of the fact that people aren't perfect. Okay, and but read, seek knowledge, talk to the Muslims, ask questions, ask the hard questions. On my show, I tell people to come on. Hey, look, ask whatever difficult question you can ask because it's a means to break down this misconception. So, find people that you can. For one, we live in the modern era where we can look up information. And if you're going to look up information about Islam, be sure that you go to Islamic sources and that you're not deceived by perpetrators who are pretending that they're Islamic sources, but actually they're not. There's many. Matter of fact, I mentioned a number of people in the book, Consider Islam, about people who are posing as Muslims and going out around, or ex-Muslims, and going around giving speeches and getting paid large sums of money to slander Islam. But in fact, these people were discovered that they were never Muslims to begin with. So in seeking knowledge, you have to be very cautious about where you get that information from, but seek it nonetheless. Seek knowledge, talk to the Muslims, come to Islamic platforms and so forth, engage the Muslims, and don't allow the social constructs of the world in which we live, with the world of Islamophobia, where Islam is always painted in a negative light. Don't let that be the defining thing in basing your opinion on Islam. I always tell people to be readers instead of repeaters. And what I mean by that is a lot of times in social media and so forth, you see that people use these same common attacks against Islam over and over again. And most of these people, they haven't sought this, looked at information up on these issues for themselves. They're just repeating the slanders and the lies over and over again. I tell them, hey, look, stop. Don't be a repeater, be a reader. Engage yourself, spend time seeking knowledge. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't like to read. They're trying to pay the light bill and so forth and get caught up in life itself and don't want to do a lot of research, but or maybe they just have limited time to do so. But if you have limited time to do so, you shouldn't be passing judgment on something that you don't have any knowledge about if you don't have a legitimate knowledge of it. So I'd encourage people to, before you pass your judgment, take time, slow down a minute, ask yourself, how did you come to believe what you believe? And, and put it on the scales and be sincere and be willing to say, maybe I don't like these Muslims because I've heard I shouldn't like them over and over and over again. That's typically what happens. Because Muslims aren't really out in the community trying to cause you any harm. They're just not. They're not hiding under the bed. They're not in the backyard and so forth. So if you put all that on the scale and say, look, let me stop passing judgment on people that I don't really know much about, and actually engage them. And if you have this inclination that our Creator is one, if you have doubts about Christianity or Buddhism or Hinduism or whatever else, or just if you have no religious background whatsoever, hey, just take time to engage. You'll be sure, be surprised at what you find out. Matter of fact, you probably fall in love with it. As a matter of fact, I know I certainly did.
Yeah, Kenny, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for sharing your story as well. It was I really enjoyed that.
That's my pleasure, brother. Let me mention one thing. Tomorrow night, I'm going to actually be engaging on Kenny Bomer Live, Consider This TV, on the YouTube channel, Reverend Samuel Green from Australia. And he is a very well-known Christian debater. He had dozens of debates. Matter of fact, a couple of decades worth of debates. And so we're going to be debating the topic, is Jesus God according to the Bible, tomorrow night. It'll be 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And of course, that's January the 15th, 2021. For people in Australia, it's actually going to be the next day. They're 17 hours ahead of us. It'll be noon for people in Australia in that time zone. But yeah, so if you want to tune into that, I think I'm looking forward to that debate. Looking forward to that debate.
Yeah, sounds interesting. And I'll also endeavour to put a link also in the show notes to that debate
Sure.
if anyone's interested in listening to that.
Thank you, brother.
So once again, Kenny, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
It was my pleasure. I thank you for having me.
Okay, and if anyone's got any questions that they want, they can submit questions through the homepage of our website on toislam.com. And also, if you have any questions for Kenny, you can go through his website, or you can go through our one as well. We'll try and get the question to him as well. So
you can email me at info@kennybomer.com if you have any questions or like to have a discussion or anything like that.
That's it. Okay, so we'll wrap it up there. So to all our listeners out there, I express my peace, and I hope that God's blessings are on all of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam, brother. Thank you.